Good morning. Welcome to the Deep 404. I might just put this video up for us just to watch while I start to give a bit of an update on what's happening in Gaza. Here we go. Israel has called on residents in the northern area of the Gaza Strip to evacuate within 24 hours. And this was a few hours ago they made this call. The United Nations has responded that Israel's call to evacuate the 1.1 million people living in the northern Gaza Strip area is unrealistic. Gaza's government media has made a statement warning the residents of Gaza that this is false propaganda, and they urge the citizens not to be drawn in by it and not to evacuate their homes, that they should remain in their homes. And that this is part of the Israeli psychological warfare against the residents of Gaza. There have been reports over the last couple of days of bombing by the Israeli Defense Forces of the Rafah crossing, which is on the western end of Gaza, and which is the crossing into the Sinai region of Egypt there. While the Israelis have indicated that they would like the Gazans to move out of Gaza and into the Sinai region, the Egyptians are not offering and suggesting that that should happen at this stage. And this in part seems to be because they believe that if the residents of Gaza do leave the Gaza Strip and move into the Sinai region within Egypt, then the Israelis will not allow them to return, ever. So the people of Gaza, while these strikes that you're watching are going on over the last couple of days, are really caught. If they do move out of Gaza, there's a very strong likelihood that they will never be allowed to return to Gaza by the Israeli government. There are further reports about this, that the Egyptian government, while supporting the Gazans and the Palestinian residents, are concerned that their ability to deliver aid to them is being restricted. While there have been aid convoys sent towards the Rafah crossing, there have been reports of bombs being dropped on that area by the IDF. So this sort of activity of saying we want you to leave the area, but we're going to bomb around the area that you need to leave, combined with reports that have come in just as I've started to do this report, that a civilian convoy of Gazan residents who were attempting to perhaps leave has been bombed. I can't confirm this, but the reports are that 70 civilians have been killed and 200 injured. It's really quite a terrible situation, as you can imagine, for those civilian people living in Gaza at the moment. There are reports coming out that the Iron Dome defense system, the Israeli-developed anti-rocket, anti-missile air defense system, Iron Dome, may not be performing as well as originally expected. Furthermore, and I won't go and comment on this in detail because I haven't done the research, but a reliable source, Simplicius the Thinker, in one of his Substack articles, has posted about this. And what he has posted about is some video and just some questioning of the available video of Iron Dome and its efficiency. and has compared and contrasted the footage available of Iron Dome with the footage available of active air defense systems in Ukraine. And the key point that he appears to be calling out is the difference in what you see when an interceptor missile explodes in Ukraine versus one in the Iron Dome. And where in Ukraine you will see an interceptor missile explode, and then you'll see debris and burning material as a missile appears to have been intercepted and struck. There appears to be a dearth of footage showing similar interceptor explosions and then the debris resulting from it. So I'm not saying one way or another that there is any sort of deception going on with the operation of Iron Dome. It's just that there has been some questions put around the available footage as to actually how successful Iron Dome itself may be. Now, as we've mentioned a couple of times, the ferocity, perhaps the strength of the Israeli response to the recent Hamas attacks on Israeli civilians is something which could have an unintended consequence for support for Israel. And as I mentioned, that could be in two areas. One, that could be in the area of if it's perceived as being too heavy-handed, Western support in the general population, not necessarily with the Biden administration, but Western support may grow for the Palestinians. Certainly there is a lot of footage coming out on Telegram channels, quite horrific, horrifying footage of children being killed and wounded by the bombs going off in Gaza. There is also the possibility that a heavy-handed response from Israel will lead to growing support by other Arab nations. So, and on that point, we have seen footage of Jordanian men approaching the border with Israel. There is video of Israel firing tear gas over the border to disperse the crowds that were growing there. There is video reportedly from yesterday with the King of Jordan deploying his forces along the border with Israel. The Emir of Qatar has reportedly stated that if the bombing of Gaza doesn't stop, we will stop gas supply of the world. So there do seem to be growing support from the Arab world for the Palestinian plight in this current conflict. The Saudi Arabian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has released a statement, and I'll just read a couple of the points from that. We affirm our categorical rejection of calls for the forced displacement of the Palestinian people from Gaza. We condemn the continued targeting of defenseless civilians in the Gaza Strip, and depriving the people of Gaza of the basic requirements for a decent living is a clear violation of international humanitarian law. Now, one thing that is being suggested is, given the fact that at this stage, as I'm reporting now, and things may change very soon, is that the Israeli ground offensive into Gaza has not commenced. Now, there has been a lot of rhetoric from Benjamin Netanyahu and Israeli senior military officials that they will be mounting a massive ground offensive into Gaza. Reportedly, they're mobilizing 300 to 350,000 reservists. We've seen video of plane loads of young Israelis returning from overseas. However, As you would expect, there are challenges with the mobilisation. There are reports coming out now that reservists who have been gathering back in Israel have not been provided with adequate food. They don't have the basic necessities, even things like personal hygiene products. Available for them in the quantities needed, and they don't have basic equipment. There is talks of orders being put out, large numbers of small orders being put out to Chinese suppliers for these type of products. Even reports that there may not be adequate personal protective equipment available for all of the returning forces. Now, this is something which Russia was criticised heavily for a year ago as they began a mobilisation last of September. But here we see it's something which will impact any modern military if they rapidly have to mobilise, and it's not something that they've prepared for. There are reports at the moment even of US Marines currently relaxing their laws around uniform requirements as there is a shortage for the woodland camouflage fatigues, and that they are now being allowed to wear desert fatigues in areas where they normally wouldn't be because there are shortages there. So the Israeli ground forces attack not proceeding yet. Many also suggesting that this may be because the Israelis may be getting cold feet in some respects, have perhaps had a chance to gather more information about Hamas and their capabilities, have perhaps been able to gather more information about the likelihood of support from Hezbollah and other Arab factions and other Arab nations, have perhaps been able to gather more information about America's ability to support Israel if this conflict were to drag on. So right now we're seeing massive bombing strikes of Gaza. However, there will be a limit to the number of those bombs that the Israelis have. There is shelling going on with Lebanon, and there may well be shelling going on with other areas if other factions, if Syria, Jordan decide to engage in some way. Now, that causes a problem for the Israelis because, as we know, the Americans are very short on ammunition. They have problems at the moment supplying Ukraine. They have problems repleting their own stockpiles, and they will certainly have problems providing to Israel. So Israel may now be in a position where they've realised that actually a large ground offensive through the streets and rubble of Gaza will not only cause them political problems in terms of the large number of casualties that they will suffer in fighting urban warfare there, but they may run out of the ability to be able to shell the Gaza Hamas fighters to the level that they would like to ensure success in this area. A report has also come out from Iraqi TV channel Al Sumaria, citing an audio recording of the former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak, where he spoke about a conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu some 10 years ago or more. And Mubarak stated that Netanyahu once said that there is a map showing the Gaza Strip and the territory near our borders, and began to consult if the population of the Gaza Strip could be moved to the Sinai Peninsula. Reportedly, Hosni Mubarak rejected the offer and suggested that anyone who comes after him in Egypt would reject the offer. But this does perhaps give insight to Netanyahu's overall goals in this area, which may be to remove the Palestinians entirely from the Gaza Strip and make Gaza part of Israel. There have also been reports of Netanyahu wanting to annex entirely the West Bank area. The West Bank area, as I've said now, while it's often considered to be, the West Bank is considered to be a Palestinian area, it is in effect actually like an archipelago of islands within that West Bank, which are Palestinian areas. Much of the land is actually populated with Israeli settlements, and there are areas within the West Bank which the Palestinians cannot travel into. So it does seem as though Netanyahu would ideally prefer to move all Palestinians out of the West Bank and Gaza, if possible, and hence the reluctance of the Egyptians to say they will accept all of the residents of Gaza, refugees from this bombing, because they believe that then they may not be let back in to Gaza in the future. Also, just a note that Iran's foreign minister, Amir Abdullahian, has met with the Hezbollah Secretary General, Sayed Hassan Nasrallah, and one begins to wonder if after Hamas's call for today, for a Muslim and Arabic uprising against the West and Israel, with limited reports of that having come to fruition so far. There have been some reports in France of a couple of stabbings, a Chinese diplomat being stabbed. However, there doesn't seem to have been, at this stage at least, a large-scale execution of that coming together of Muslim and Arabic forces. However, one does wonder if perhaps what's happening now is Hezbollah and perhaps other Arab states are waiting and watching the Israeli response, waiting to see how far it goes and what it looks like. They themselves considering the fact that Israel may not be able to proceed too far due to uncertainty about being able to receive support from the US. Some suggesting that if this is seen as an opportunity by the Arab nations to engage a weakened Israel, that they may be just biding their time and letting Israel use some of its reserves before engaging further. I can't say. I'm not aware of what the Iran's plans might be in this area, or Hezbollah's. Although we are seeing some engagement with Hezbollah at the moment on the southern Lebanon border, there is Israeli shelling of the areas there. There have been journalists who were filming the Israeli Defense Forces shelling of southern Lebanon, and they themselves have come under Israeli shelling attack. There is some very gruesome footage of the result of that shell strike, which killed one reporter and allegedly has injured 3 others. This shelling was reportedly conducted on the reporters by the Israelis. Hezbollah has released a statement about this, and they've said, in response to the Israeli attacks this afternoon on the vicinity of a number of southern Lebanese towns, the Mujahideen of the Islamic Resistance attacked the following Israeli outposts: the Al-Badad site, the Miskvam site, the Ramia site, and the Jal al-Alam site, with direct fire and appropriate weapons, and they achieved accurate hits. So, Hezbollah, at least engaged to some extent, not committed to this fight just yet, but definitely tensions rising, with the UK committing to sending naval boats to the area, with the US sending the Gerald Ford carrier strike fleet, and suggestions that they may also send a second carrier, the Ronald Reagan, to the area. The next few days will, I think, give us an indication of how this offensive is going to proceed. If we do find within the next 24 hours or so that that Israel do mount a large ground attack against Gaza, then this conflict will extend for some time, and there's a very strong likelihood that there will be further engagement from other Arab states, Hezbollah for one. If, however, Israel finds a reason to explain why they are not going to enter with ground forces and their bombing of Gaza stops, then we may find that this conflict calms down at this stage. What the ongoing result would be, and how it resolves itself, or if it flares up again in the future, who can say? But the Israelis may be pushed to a position where they are reluctant to continue, given the inability of America to resupply them, should they find themselves, if their strategic thinkers are suggesting that if they do start, they will end up getting into a larger conflict with Hezbollah, and perhaps with other Arab nations, perhaps with Iran itself, then they may look to sit this out for a while and give the US time to try and resupply. Remember that Ukraine is also requesting more support from the US, and the US is struggling to do that. So on that point, I will conclude this Israeli report for today, and I will jump onto the Ukraine one. So that should be up on the Deep 404 at the same time as this one if you're looking for a Ukraine update as well. All right, I hope you're having a good weekend. I'll talk to you soon.